up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Twenties podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to reminding you of your God-given purpose through personal testimonies, trials, and personal revelations. I believe that each and every single one of us was created with a purpose, for a purpose, but it is up to us to align with it. I'm your host, T. Louise, and I'm so excited for today's episode. This is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while now, but I really didn't know how to piece it. And so I'm really excited for how it's going to be pieced together. And like I said on my last episode was really led by the Holy Spirit, y'all. Like the revelations that God was giving me to be able to put out, I am experiencing depression, I'm not depressed, was magnificent. But the understanding and the revelations that God has given me for this episode as well is also magnificent. And like I said, in this season that I'm in, I'm learning to hear God's voice better. I'm learning who God is. And so the 40 years in the wilderness it's not just about 40 years in your wilderness. It could be 4 years in your wilderness. It could be 4 weeks in your wilderness. It could be 4 months in your wilderness. The point of it is it could be 4 months too long. It could be 4 years too long. It could be 40 years too long. And I really want you guys to understand that even though we may be in a wilderness season because of something God has us learning, purging us from, and all these different things, but sometimes we can keep ourselves in the wilderness longer than we are supposed to be. And it's simply because sometimes we have an issue going full in and trusting God completely. And so sometimes when we have that problem, it causes us to stay longer in our wilderness season. But I'm telling y'all, that's not going to be the only point that I hit today, but I just want to say thank you so much. Each and every single one of you guys, I have been getting so much love and feedback in regards to the I'm experiencing depression, I'm not depressed episode. And I just want to let you guys know that I love and appreciate every single one of you guys for joining me along on my Twisted 20s journey. It's really impactful for me to share my journey with Christ, my journey of growth, my journey of healing, my journey through everything. I mean, if you guys go back to some of my very first episodes, I was cussing. I was really deep into New Age spirituality. And that's why I'm doing the 40 years in the wilderness episode. I never want to forget where God brought me out of. But I'm not, look, I gotta slow my roll. Okay. I ain't gonna get too much into it right now, but I just wanted to give thanks and appreciation to each and every single one of you guys that have continued to support me, continue to comment and review and give me feedback. It really encourages me, especially when I feel like I'm only listening to myself. If you guys are joining me in on YouTube, welcome in the room. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button because you do not want to miss another episode of Twisted 20s. If you guys are joining me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever platform you are on, I would really love to hear you guys' feedback. If you guys could leave me a review and let me know how Twisted 20s is impacting your life, I would love to hear from you. With that being said, y'all, brace yourself because today's episode is going to be full of meat and full of love. With that being said, y'all, we about to go ahead and get into today's podcast episode. So how this episode really came about was I was reading my Bible a couple weeks ago, and I'm on this journey where I'm trying to stick to a Bible reading plan. So God was like, I need you to read the book of Isaiah, which I've been reading the book of Isaiah, y'all. When I tell you Isaiah was sent and he was getting these countries together, okay, baby, like he was sent and he was being obedient to God, and some of the stuff that God was telling him to tell these people had me like shook. Okay, I was shook. But one day I was really going through it with my job. I was emotional. I'm like, God, like, what do I do? I really was just kind of looking back on my life, and I'm like, God, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm struggling financially. I feel like I'm living check to check. Like, I was really like feeling down in the dumps. And God was like, read Psalms. So initially I'm like, well, what part of Psalms? Like, it's like 1,000 chapters. It's like 1,000 chapters of Psalms. Like, Psalms feel like it's so long, but it's not. But God was like, start at Psalms 103. I read Psalms 103 through 106. And when I say the entire chapters of 103 and 106 got me together real quick. And the reason for that is it talked about the children of Israel being in the wilderness and their lack of faith in God, even after all the miracle signs and wonders that God has showed them while they were in the wilderness. I mean, like, he literally parted the Red Sea for them to cross, okay? Like, these people, I'm just mentally trying to, when I was reading this, I was mentally trying to comprehend the fact that these people were walking on the bottom of the ocean, or the bottom of the Red Sea, shall I say. Like, mentally trying to comprehend that. And I promise y'all I'm going somewhere with this, so stay with me, okay? But I want you to really, like, just sit in the moment, like, and really try to picture that in your head. Like, picture that in your mind. You're in the wilderness. God has brought you out of Egypt. And now you see Pharaoh and his homeboys on their chariots, on the horses, finna come and get you. And you shook. And God then told this man Moses to reach out his staff across the Red Sea and part it. But God parted it through Moses. And you walking on dry land in the middle of the Red Sea. Like, just imagine that. Imagine you're walking in the middle of the desert or the forest, and manna is being rained down from the clouds. Imagine you're walking in the wilderness and it's pitch dark, no lights, nothing. And there is literally a light that is floating or walking with you in the wilderness. I want y'all to imagine that. Like, even after they saw all of those things, even after they saw what God had done for them, even after all of that, they still question God. They still question God. And when I read that, I was like, oh, I was like, well, God, you ain't, look, he was like, you're questioning me. And I also thought about something Jerry Flowers said. Y'all know I'm a huge advocate for Jerry Flowers. I do not support or promote a lot of pastors, but Jerry Flowers is a pastor that I feel like I will always continue to listen to. I am very picky when it comes to people that I allow in my ear gates. And I will continue to listen to Jerry Flowers until, let me never rephrase that. I will continue to listen to Jerry Flowers as long as he continues to be the man of God that he is presenting himself to be. And the sermons and the things that he preaches about pours into me, in my spirit. And Jerry said, sometimes you're not in a wilderness. He was like, sometimes you're not in a wilderness. Sometimes it's not, oh, God blocked that opportunity, or God closed that door. Sometimes we are dealing with the aftertaste of our choices. And when he said that, I was like, ooh. And then I also heard my spiritual mom in my head. My spiritual mom, she said, some of y'all, she said, some of y'all are working jobs, some of y'all are living check to check, and some of y'all are having to work 9 to 5s because y'all was disobedient to when God told y'all to start that business because y'all was being fearful. And I was like, oh, like it was just like all week I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over again. I know God told me to start a business a couple years ago, but I wanted it to be the way that I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be my vision, my idea. And now I'm like, now I have to wait for God to give me the green light to open it again. Because now I want it to be his vision, his idea, his designs. I don't want it to be me. I want it to be God. And so because of that, I had to put out, because of the decisions that I made out of fear, which caused me to be in a place of disobedience, I'm now having to deal with the repercussions of my choices. The best example I can give y'all, someone I know made, I'm trying to use wisdom because I don't want to put the person's business out there, but I do want to use it as an example because I think it's so important that we understand that when we make decisions without God, it affects everything. And I don't think sometimes when people deal with the aftertaste, as Jerry says, the aftertaste of their choices, I don't think that people put two and two together. I don't think that people actually sit down and say, am I going through this because I was disobedient? Am I going through this because I chose to do this even though God didn't give me the okay or the green light to do it? And, you know, I know someone who made a very difficult decision, and it was very difficult on them mentally and emotionally. And they are still suffering 5 years later for a decision that they made out of disobedience. And I can speak from my own experience. I made a lot of decisions out of disobedience before I even had a relationship with God. It's one thing to move in disobedience and you have a relationship with God, but it's another thing to move out of disobedience and you don't have a relationship with God. And the choices, when I was making the choices I was making, I know that it was nothing but God's grace upon me, because some of the things that I was doing, some of the things that I was dibbling, dabbling in was nothing but God's grace and protection. When God brings us out of something, I don't understand why we choose to go back to the very thing that God brought us out of. We are impatient on our journey, which leads us to longer seasons in the wilderness. And for me, I was always like, I'll use an example. I've talked about this before. I used to smoke weed all the time. I used to smoke weed every day, y'all. Every day, all day. Wake and bake, sleep and bake, whatever you want to call it. I was that person. I would smoke all day, every day. Because I wanted to feel numb. I wanted to feel void. I didn't want to feel nothing, but I was miserable. My life was miserable. And, you know, when I first started smoking weed back in high school, it was something that I did, you know, just with my friends. It wasn't something that became a ritual that I did every single day. It was just something I did when I would kick it with my friends. And honestly, I can't tell you when it became a issue. You know what? Actually, yes, I can. I take that back. It became an issue when I was in college. When I was in college, that was when I experienced depression for the first time. It was my sophomore year in college when me and my best friend, DeMonte, had moved off of campus and we got our own apartment. We was drinking and smoking every single day. I had dropped out of school. I had to move back home. That made me I experienced depression even deeper at that point. And it just became something that I would do to just feel numb and feel the void of my life. And I'm telling you guys all of this because I want you to understand where God has brought me out of. And as I was reading Psalms 103 and through 106, chapter 103 through 106, and I really encourage you guys to really go and read it for yourselves, just to really understand what God said in those chapters. And let God speak to you. Let the Holy Spirit lead you when you're reading. But for me, what it helped me to understand was I had to continue to remember the things that God had done in my life. Like, even if one person listens to my podcast, I'm still being obedient to what God has called me to do. And it lets me know that what God is speaking through me is impacting that one person. And I've said it before, I used to dibble and dab into witchcraft. Unknowingly, y'all. Unknowingly. I did not know it was witchcraft at the time. I was just like, oh, well, it's just new age spirituality. But then, of course, God started revealing through me and my sister that it was witchcraft. And so, of course, honey, I had to wrap that up real quick, honey. I threw it all out. Crystals, tarot cards, books, candles. I threw it all out. Me and my mama, before my mama passed away, I've talked about this before. I don't know if I've been as vulnerable and intimate about it. Before my mama passed away, we were sleeping in our car. Homeless, sleeping in our car. We was bouncing around from extended stay to extended stay. We ended up staying with one of my aunt's friends' daughters in the projects. I mean, just living in roaches everywhere. Like, it was a very trying, struggling moment for us. And then we ended up back in our car. We slept in our car from the summertime. We were at the apartment with her for like 2 months. And then in December, we ended up back in our car. I'm talking about we wearing layers and layers of clothes. And the only thing that I can say is God, I'm thankful that we weren't sleeping on the road. Like, we weren't sleeping under a bridge. We had a car to sleep in. But I will never forget what it felt like I had to boo-boo in the pouring rain. In the middle of a thunderstorm, I had to poop in the rain. I had to wipe myself in the rain. I will never forget what that felt like. Now I'm living in a 2-bedroom townhome. I have my own car. I have a roof over my head. I have a full-time job. I have not had a job in years. And by the way, I've been working for this company for 1 year. That's the longest I've ever worked for a company. If anybody who knows me knows that if I ever felt unfulfilled at a job, I would quit. I would let it go. But even if I didn't feel fulfilled at a job, I never would work or find something that caused me to find fulfillment. This is probably, when I'm doing my podcast, I feel fulfilled. And I have to continue to do my podcast because when I work at my job, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't. I'm working at my job because I got to pay my bills. I got things I got to do. I'm an adult. I got to take care of myself. But I'm also at my job because that's what God has provided for me. God provided that job for me. Honest to goodness, I cannot make this up. I never applied for this job. I think I talked about this on my blog. I work at Nordstrom. I never applied for a job at Nordstrom. I looked everywhere in my emails to try to find the application. You know how like when you apply for jobs and they send you an email? Nothing, nada, zero, not zilch was in my email. Nothing at all. It was almost as if this job fell out of heaven. That's what I can say. The job fell out of heaven because I have no idea how I got the job. To this day, I will literally look at my emails trying to find the email after I applied for that job, and it's nowhere to be found. But God provided that for me. And I say all that to say is that God's love is so unfailing. It made me think that even in the wilderness with the Israelites, when they would go back to disobedience and worshiping their other idols and doing what they were doing, and even in the midst of all of that, when they would cry out, Lord, Lord, save us, or God, help us, he still came and he saved them. He still came because his love is unfailing. But not just that, he remembered and honored his covenant that he had made with Abraham and the oath that he had with Isaac. He didn't have to do that. He did that because he loves us. He did that because he's unchanging. He did that because he is a man of his word. He did that because of his characteristics. And that's what I've been learning about God. That's what I've been learning over these past couple months. I'll probably say the past 2 months. God has really been showing me, just reading that alone, just reading Psalm 103 through 106, helped me to really understand who God is. Sure, he's a provider, he's a protector. But when I read that was God the Father. That was God the promise keeper. That was our Savior. A lot of us are in these wilderness seasons. We're questioning God. We're ready to make moves without consulting God. All I'm saying is think twice. I'll give you another example. I was in such turmoil a couple weeks ago, about a month ago at this point. I was about to quit my job. I really was. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of Nordstrom. Like, they tripping. I don't feel like they care about us as their employees. Oh, you know what? They want me to take these calls now. They want me to do chat, email, and calls, and take calls for this part of the company too. They ain't gave me no raise. I'm just coming up with all type of excuses and complaining. And I'm gonna tell you 2 things that got me together. I went in my closet and I prayed to God. And I said, God, what do I do? And sometimes, like I've said before, I said this last episode, when I cannot hear God because my emotions are so loud, or the voice or the answer that I want him to say is too loud, I talk to my spiritual mom. Y'all, I was in turmoil about this for weeks. And something that my big brother told me, my big brother David, and this is something that I want y'all to keep in mind too before you make decisions. We were me and Davion were talking about moving to Texas, which I'm still believing in having faith that the Lord will allow us to put some roots down in Houston, because I really love Houston, and sometimes Atlanta be getting a little too rowdy for me. But we were talking to him about, moving to Houston. He was like, do you feel at peace about it? And I said, no. He said, then you're not supposed to go. I was not at peace about quitting my job, but I was trying to force that peace. You cannot force peace. I'm talking, y'all, I was literally in my prayer closet praying to God, talking about, God, I'm coming up with a plan. I'm like, if I quit my job at Nordstrom, I can do Instacart, I can do this, I can do that, while I'm looking for another job. I would have had to work twice as hard if I had quit my job to make the amount of money that I make now. I would have to put wear and tear on my car just to make the money that I make now. And it was so stressful even thinking about all the things that I would have had to do in order to take care of myself. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm supposed to quit my job. I talked to my spiritual mom and she was like, you don't need to be moving nowhere. You need to sit still. I'm like, yeah, it's not time for me to leave my job. My spiritual mom also told me whenever God is ready to promote you or move you somewhere else, he will always have a ram in the bush. God is never going to tell you to quit your job and not have another job ready for you. But a lot of us, we quit stuff and we move to the next thing, and then we expect God, because we moved, we expect God to have his hand on it, or we expect God to play catch up to meet us. But in reality, we're supposed to meet God where he is. We're supposed to be obedient to where God is telling us to stay, where God is telling us to go, where God is telling us to stop. And this is exactly why we continue to be in long seasons, long suffering seasons at that, chaotic seasons. And this is why we continue to be in these wilderness seasons, that God placed us in a wilderness, but then it's like we place ourselves longer in the wilderness. God is like, you are only supposed to be in this season, in this wilderness, for a year. But because you moved prematurely, now you got to be in it 2 years. Or 3 years, or 4 years, or 5 years, or 6 years. And after reading that, y'all, I'm telling y'all, after reading Psalm chapter 103 through 106, I'm going to keep saying the chapter so y'all know to go read that. After reading that, I was like, God, I never want to forget what you brought me out of. Because I never want to go back to disobedience. And I'm not saying we perfect. I'm not saying we're going to get it right every single time. It may be a time where fear may creep in and I'm like, I don't know about that guy. I'm a little hesitant. There may be times where God may show me something in my head. It used to annoy me that God would show me a finished product. And I'm like, God, why would you show me that? Like, I want to be there. Like, I expect to just close my eyes, wake up, and I'm there. Something Miles Monroe said, I just saw the video on Instagram. And it was basically like, if God showed us the plan, we would give up. So it's like, that's why God will show me the finished product. He has showed me speaking to thousands of people. He has showed me being successful. He has shown me my podcast growing. He showed me all of that. But if he showed me what the roadmap looked like to get there, I might would have took a back seat. I would have been like, you know what? Pull over. I got this. I'm going to drive. I'm going to find a quicker way to get us there. Maybe we can just, since we live in Atlanta, God, maybe we don't have to take the interstate. Because, traffic is real, real thick. And it might take us about 2 hours to get there, even though we 5 miles away. I know a back street, a shortcut. Maybe we could take that and you just hop in the passenger seat and I got this. Really and truly. But I never want to forget God brought me out of homelessness. He brought me out of, and I'm speaking this now, he brought me out of poverty. And not just poverty being financially, poverty meaning a poverty mindset. He delivered me from my addictions and my stronghold to marijuana. He brought me out of witchcraft, whether we want to call it witchcraft or not. I'm telling y'all, I'm going to do an episode about witchcraft. I don't know when I'm gonna do it yet. It's on my list to do. I'm gonna be obedient to when God tell me to do it. I'm telling y'all, God has brought me out of so much I was finna say it, y'all, but then I was finna mess it up. Promiscuous behavior, sleeping around, fornicating. The other thing I'm working on right now is my mouth, cussing, trying to get that together. Now I'm listening to the clean versions of songs because I'm trying to be intentional about my language. There is so much God has brought me out of. And I told God, I said, God, I never want to forget that. And I pray that I never forget that. And I said, if it even look like I'm about to forget, check me. Bring me back into remembrance. Because I don't care how big the platform gets. I don't care how big the stage is. I never want to forget what it felt like to sleep in my car. I never want to forget what it felt like to have $0 to my name. I never want to forget what it felt like to want to feel numb and depressed and suppressing my emotions. I never want to forget what it felt like to be tormented mentally. And that's the problem, is we forget. The children of Israel, they forgot. They forgot. And they continue in a continuous cycle for 40 years. For 40 years. They continued in a cycle of God saving them, then going back to the very thing God saved them from. God saving them, then going back. God saved them, then going back. God saved them, then going back. I don't want to live in that cycle. Now, and like I said, I'm not perfect. There are going to be times when I'm gonna make mistakes. There are going to be times when I may sin, and this sin may be as simple as gossip. It may be something as I may use God's name. The other day I was driving and I said God's name in vain. I was like, Lord, please forgive me. Please forgive me. We are not perfect. This flesh we are in, it's a sinly flesh. It wants to sin. It wants to. It's just crying out for sin. And that's why we have to surrender our flesh to our spirit. God didn't have to save them in the wilderness. Every single time that they went back to their idols, their bull that they built, their bull statue, He didn't have to save them. God doesn't have to save us. He didn't have to save you when you went back to that boy that He told you need to leave alone. God didn't have to save you when you was being disobedient. He didn't have to save you. But He did. He saved you because of His unwavering love. In the wilderness, we have to continue to be faithful and remember where God brought us out of. And when we come out of that wilderness, we don't forget the lessons that we learned. We don't forget the things that God purged us of. I never want to forget those things. I want to always remain humble and remember that my God brought me out of some nasty things. I never want to forget that. I pray that this episode was impactful, encouraging, mindful, but most importantly, I pray that this episode helped you to understand that even in the midst of us being disobedient, even in the midst of us being fearful, being doubt, having lack of faith, even in the midst of us forgetting what God has done for us, He still loves us. And He will continue to save us. It doesn't mean that we won't have to deal with the consequences and the repercussions. My mama taught me that at an early age. She used to tell me every time, you're going to have to deal with the repercussions and actions of your actions, my bad. She would say, every choice that you make has a repercussion behind it. A repercussion and a consequence. That's what she used to tell me when I would make bad choices. That's what she used to tell me. And we can't look at it as, oh, God is punishing us because we did this and that. No. We just got to deal with the repercussions of our actions. And because God loves us, He allows us to experience those repercussions of our actions. Because what kind of father would He be if He didn't allow us to experience discipline from our own disobedience? I love you guys. If this episode was impactful, empowering, mindful for you, please leave me a review. I would love to hear what you thought about today's episode. If you're listening on Spotify, I have a Q&A at the end as well, so you guys can let me know what you thought about today's episode. If there's anything that you guys would love to hear me talk about, leave that as well in the Q&A on Spotify. And you can also DM me on social media at I am T Louise. I am .T Louise, or the Twisted 20s podcast on Instagram as well. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. Peace, love, and blessings. T Louise.